Hello there, and welcome back to another story from Sleep Theories. Before we begin tonight's tale, I hope you're settling in comfortably wherever you are in the world. How was your day? Whether it's late at night where you are, or perhaps you're listening during a quiet afternoon, I hope this story finds you well. Let me know in the comments what time it is where you're listening from. I always love hearing from listeners across different time zones, from Tokyo to Toronto, from London to Los Angeles. And if you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to subscribe to Sleep Theories for more tales to drift off to. Now, let's begin our journey into the shadows of conspiracy and truth. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, which struck Cole Merrick as oddly appropriate. Tuesdays had always been the day when the world seemed to shift slightly off its axis, when normalcy wore thin enough to glimpse what lay beneath. He found it propped against his weathered mailbox at the end of his dirt driveway, wrapped in brown paper that had been sealed with old-fashioned wax. Cole hadn't received a package he wasn't expecting in years, not since he'd left his position at Blackwater Systems, the defence contractor that had made him wealthy enough to disappear into the high desert of New Mexico. He'd chosen this place specifically for its isolation, 40 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by nothing but sagebrush and the occasional roadrunner. The return address made his blood run cold. Felix Marrow, with an address in Virginia that Cole recognised as being 3 blocks from CIA headquarters. Felix had been dead for 4 years. At least that's what the official report had claimed after his car went off a bridge in rural Maryland. No body recovered, they said. The current was too strong. Cole carried the package inside, his hands trembling slightly as he set it on his kitchen table. The house was silent except for the hum of his various computers. Even in retirement, he couldn't quite give up the electronic companions that had defined his career. He'd spent 15 years designing cybersecurity systems for the NSA before moving to the private sector. He knew how to find information that didn't want to be found, and more importantly, he knew how to recognise when information was finding him. Inside the package were 3 things: a flash drive, a folder of photocopied documents, and a handwritten note in Felix's unmistakable scrawl. Cole, if you're reading this, then they finally got sloppy. What you're holding is why I had to disappear. Don't trust anyone, especially anyone who claims to be helping. The rabbit hole goes deeper than Northwoods ever imagined. They're not planning it anymore. They're doing it. Burn after reading. F. Cole didn't burn the note. Instead, he plugged the flash drive into an air-gapped laptop he kept for exactly this sort of situation. What appeared on the screen made him forget to breathe for a full 10 seconds. The first document was labelled Operation Northwoods, Original Proposal, 1962, Declassified. Cole knew about Northwoods, of course. Anyone who'd worked in intelligence knew about the Pentagon's plan to stage terrorist attacks on American soil to justify an invasion of Cuba. It had been rejected by Kennedy and supposedly buried forever. But the second document was what made his hands shake. Project Echo Mantle, Operational Framework, 2018 to 2024, Eyes Only. The language was nearly identical to the Northwoods proposals, but updated for the modern era. Instead of hijacked planes and assassinations, it spoke of cyber attacks, biological releases, and mimetic warfare. Where Northwoods had targeted Cuba, Echo Mantle had a rotating list of targets: Iran, North Korea, domestic extremist groups, and something called non-state algorithmic entities. Cole scrolled through page after page of operational plans. A staged chemical attack in Damascus that would be blamed on Assad but actually conducted by contracted mercenaries. A series of infrastructure cyber attacks that would appear to originate from Beijing but were designed in a basement in Langley. Most chilling of all was a section titled Domestic Catalysts that outlined plans for shootings, bombings and riots within the United States, all designed to create what the document called sufficient emotional activation for policy implementation. The dates made Cole's stomach turn. Some of these events had already happened. He remembered the headlines, the outrage, the swift military responses. Events he'd assumed were genuine terrorist attacks, or foreign aggression might have been orchestrated by his own government. He opened the folder of photocopied documents and found correspondence between high-ranking officials whose names had been redacted but whose writing styles he recognised. One memo discussed the acceptable casualty threshold for domestic operations. Another calculated the media saturation timeline needed to ensure public support for military action. But it was the final document that made Cole realise why Felix had sent this to him. It was a list of names titled Echo Mantle, Operational Security Risks. His own name was third on the list, marked with a red X. Felix's name was above his, also marked. Of the 20 names on the list, 13 had red X's. A quick search confirmed what Cole feared. All 13 had died in accidents, suicides, or sudden illnesses within the past 5 years. Cole stood up from his computer and walked to his window, looking out at the endless desert. Somewhere out there, beyond the heat, mirages, and distant mountains, people were living their lives believing in a reality that might be nothing more than an elaborate stage production. And now he held the proof in his hands. He thought about destroying everything, pretending the package had never arrived. He could go back to his quiet retirement, his morning coffee on the porch, his evening walks among the Joshua trees. But he knew that was no longer an option. His name was on that list. They already considered him a risk. Cole picked up his encrypted phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 3 years. Dr. Alina Greaves answered on the second ring. Cole? Jesus, I thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. I need your help, Alina. It's about Northwoods. There was a long pause. Northwoods was 60 years ago, Cole. No, Cole said, looking at the document spread across his table. It wasn't. Dr. Alina Greaves lived in a cluttered apartment above a used bookstore in Burlington, Vermont. When Cole arrived after driving for 2 days straight, switching vehicles twice and paying cash for everything, he found her surrounded by towers of books and papers that threatened to topple at the slightest vibration. You look terrible, she said, ushering him inside and checking the hallway before closing the door. You would too if you'd seen what I've seen. Alina had been his closest friend during his time at NSA, one of the few people who could match his paranoia with historical precedent. She'd left the agency to pursue academia, becoming one of the world's foremost experts on Cold War black operations. If anyone could verify the authenticity of the Echo Mantle documents, it would be her. Cole spread the papers across her coffee table, which required moving several stacks of books about MKUltra and Operation Mockingbird. Alina put on her reading glasses and began examining them with the intensity of an archaeologist studying ancient texts. The syntax is perfect, she murmured, after an hour of silence. The classification markings, the bureaucratic language, the operational structure, it all matches authentic documents from that era. But look here, she pointed to a paragraph in the Echo Mantle framework. This isn't just inspired by Northwoods, it's a direct evolution. They've taken the original concept and adapted it for the digital age. So you think it's real? Alina removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Cole, I've spent 20 years studying how our government has lied to us. Operations that were dismissed as conspiracy theories until the documents were declassified decades later. If you'd shown me this without context, I'd say it was an elaborate hoax, but with Felix's involvement, with your name on that list. We need more proof, Cole said. These documents reference specific operations, code names, locations. If we can verify even one of them independently, we'd have evidence of the biggest conspiracy in American history. Alina was already at her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Let me check something. You said there was a reference to the Bastion complex. A summit in 2019, supposedly at a decommissioned NORAD facility. Bastion complex isn't decommissioned, Alina said, pulling up satellite imagery. It's off the official books, but look at these heat signatures. That facility is very much operational. They spent the next 3 days cross-referencing the Echo Mantle documents with publicly available information. Patterns began to emerge. Shell companies mentioned in the files had real addresses, real tax filings, but no real employees. Military contractors listed as participants had received billions in black budget allocations with no public accountability. Think tanks referenced in the correspondence had published policy papers that perfectly predicted terrorist attacks weeks before they occurred. Look at this, Alina said, highlighting a section of financial records. Darkwater Industries received a $500 million contract in March 2019. The official purpose was consulting services, but trace the money through these subsidiaries, and it leads to a private military company that was operating in Syria during the chemical attack. The one that triggered the bombing campaign, Cole finished him. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. The CEO of Darkwater, General Erwin Saber. Cole felt his blood run cold. Saber's been dead since 2015. Official records show he died of a heart attack. Official records show a lot of things, Alina said, pulling up a new window. But I've been tracking anomalies in death certificates for my research. Look at this. She showed him a pattern of high-ranking military and intelligence officials who had supposedly died but whose death certificates had irregularities, missing coroner signatures, cremations ordered despite family objections, closed casket funerals with no viewing. They're not dead, Cole whispered. They've been relocated to run Echo Mantle off the books. It makes sense, Alina said. Dead men can't be subpoenaed. They can't be traced. They're perfect for running operations that can never be acknowledged. Cole studied the surveillance footage Alina had managed to acquire from a gas station near the Bastion complex. The quality was poor, but he could make out a convoy of black SUVs arriving at the facility. She'd enhanced one frame that showed a figure emerging from a vehicle. The face was partially obscured, but the military bearing, the way he carried himself, it could have been Saber. We need someone who was on the inside, Cole said. Someone who saw Echo Mantle in operation and lived to tell about it. Alina pulled up another file. I might have a lead. Yusuf Tanner, former Air Force signal analyst. He tried to blow the whistle on something in 2010 but was discredited and discharged. Last known address was in Oregon, but that was 5 years ago. If he's smart, he's using a different name now. If he's alive at all, Alina added grimly. They began the delicate process of tracking someone who didn't want to be found. It took 2 weeks of careful investigation, following digital breadcrumbs through ham radio licenses, off-grid power installations, and rural property records. Finally, they found him living under the name Samuel Carpenter in a cabin 40 miles east of Portland. How do we approach him without spooking him? Cole asked. Alina smiled grimly. We don't. If he's survived this long, it's because he's more paranoid than both of us combined. We go there, we knock on his door, and we hope he doesn't shoot first and ask questions later. As they prepared for the drive to Oregon, Cole noticed something that made his heart sink. A van had been parked across from Alina's building for the past 3 days. Different drivers, but the same van. They were being watched. Pack light, he told Alina, and bring everything we've found. We won't be coming back here. She looked around her apartment, at the decades of the research that represented her life's work, and nodded. I always knew this day might come. Let's go find Yusuf before they find us. The drive to Oregon took 18 hours. They switched vehicles 3 times, doubled back twice, and took routes that no GPS would recommend. By the time they reached the forest road leading to Yusuf's cabin, they were exhausted but confident they'd lost any surveillance. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by Douglas firs so tall they seemed to scrape the sky. Radio antennas bristled from the roof like the spines of some electronic porcupine. As they approached, Cole noticed the subtle signs of serious security, motion sensors in the trees, cameras disguised as birdhouses, and what looked like an early warning system of tripwires. They were still 50 feet from the front door when a voice crackled from a hidden speaker. That's far enough. State your business. Mr. Tanner, Alina called out. My name is Dr. Alina Greaves. This is Cole Merrick. We have information about Echo Mantle. The silence stretched for so long that Cole wondered if they'd made a mistake. Then the front door opened, and a man emerged holding a shotgun with the casual ease of someone who'd held it many times before. Yusuf Tanner was smaller than Cole had expected, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing, and hands that remained perfectly steady. Echo Mantle, Yusuf said, not lowering the gun. Haven't heard those words in a long time. You're either very brave or very stupid to come here saying them. We have documents, Cole said, holding up the folder. Felix Marrow sent them to me before he died. Felix isn't dead, Yusuf said, but he might as well be. They've got him in a black site somewhere, probably pumping him full of drugs to keep him compliant. Come inside, quickly. The interior of the cabin was a mixture of survivalist practicality and high-tech paranoia. Banks of radio equipment lined one wall, while monitors displayed feeds from the external cameras. Yusef gestured for them to sit at a table made from reclaimed wood while he examined their documents. "Jesus Christ," he whispered after reading for several minutes. "They actually put it in writing. The arrogant bastards actually documented it." "You've seen this before?" Alina asked. "Seen it? I helped build the communication infrastructure for it." Yusef poured himself a glass of whiskey with shaking hands. 2008 to 2010. I was stationed at a listening post in Turkey, tasked with monitoring terrorist chatter. Except the chatter I was intercepting wasn't coming from terrorists. It was coming from our own people, coordinating with assets on the ground. He told them about intercepted communications between American handlers and local operators, messages discussing payment for performance pieces, attacks that would be blamed on insurgent groups. He described listening to an American voice directing the placement of an IED that would later kill 3 Marines and justify expansion of drone strikes. "I tried to report it through proper channels," Yusef continued. "My commanding officer told me I was misunderstanding what I was hearing. When I persisted, they transferred me to a psychiatric unit. Said I was suffering from paranoid delusions brought on by the stress of deployment." "But you kept evidence," Cole said. Yusef smiled grimly. "I'm not stupid. I recorded everything. Not the classified intercepts. That would have been treason. But I kept logs, timestamps, frequency signatures. Enough to prove that someone was running false flag operations out of our facility." He led them to a hidden compartment behind his refrigerator and pulled out a metal box filled with hard drives and written logs. "This is 10 years of tracking Echo Mantle's communications. They got more sophisticated after I left. Started using quantum encryption, but I could still identify their signature patterns." "The 2020 embassy riots in South Sudan," Alina said. "The documents mention those specifically." "I have the intercepts," Yusef confirmed, pulling up files on one of his computers. "Listen to this." He played an audio file. Through the static, they could hear 2 voices. "Phoenix, this is Control. Embassy security has been pulled back to the inner compound." "Copy, Control. Local assets are in position. Initiating crowd catalyst in 30 seconds. Remember, Phoenix, let it burn long enough for the cameras, but not so long that we lose the whole building." "Understood. Sufficient damage for military response authorization." The timestamp showed the recording was made 6 hours before the riots began. "They knew," Cole said quietly. "They orchestrated the whole thing." "That riot killed 43 people," Alina added, "including the ambassador." "Acceptable casualties," Yusef said bitterly. "That's what they call them. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Necessary sacrifices for the greater agenda." They spent hours going through Yusef's archives, matching his intercepts with events from the Echo Mantle documents. The pattern was undeniable. Every major terrorist attack that had justified military intervention in the past decade showed signs of American coordination. "But why?" Cole asked. "What's the endgame?" "Control," Yusef said simply. "Perpetual war means perpetual emergency powers. Every attack justifies more surveillance, more military spending, more erosion of civil liberties. They're not trying to win the war on terror. They're trying to make it last forever." A proximity alarm suddenly blared. Yusef checked his monitors and cursed. 3 vehicles approaching from the main road. Black SUVs. How did they find us? Cole felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He'd turned it off 50 miles ago, removed the battery for good measure. Shouldn't have been able to receive anything. With trembling fingers, he pulled it out. The screen showed a single message. "You can't run from us, Cole. Let's discuss this like civilized people." "They've been tracking us the whole time," Alina breathed. "The documents, Felix's package, it was all bait." "The basement," Yusuf said, already gathering his hard drives. "There's a tunnel that leads to the river. We can—" The lights went out. In the darkness, they could hear vehicles pulling up outside, doors slamming, boots on gravel. "Go," Yusef said, pressing a flash drive into Cole's hand. "This has everything, the intercepts, the proof. Get it out there. Make it public." "Come with us," Alina urged. "Someone needs to slow them down. I've got surprises buried all over this property. Go!" As Cole and Alina stumbled through the darkness toward the basement, they heard Yusef's voice over his broadcast system. Federal agents, you are trespassing on private property. This facility is protected by the Fourth Amendment and various booby traps. I suggest you reconsider your approach." The explosion that followed shook the entire cabin. Cole didn't look back. The tunnel was a nightmare of claustrophobia and darkness. Cole and Alina crawled through 300 yards of damp earth, guided only by the faint LED strip Yusef had installed along the ceiling. Behind them, they could hear more explosions, gunfire and shouting. Whatever surprises Yusef had prepared were buying them time, but Cole knew it wouldn't last long. They emerged on a riverbank where Yusef had hidden a small boat. As they pushed off into the current, Cole saw smoke rising above the tree line. The cabin was burning. "He's gone," Alina said quietly. "Maybe. Yusef was a survivor. If anyone could." Cole stopped mid-sentence as his borrowed phone buzzed. The screen showed an incoming call from his own number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hello, Cole." The voice was calm, professional, with just a hint of amusement. "My name is Director Harrison. I believe you have some documents that belong to us." "They belong to the American people," Cole said. "How idealistic. Tell me, Cole, what do you think would happen if those documents were released? Mass panic? The collapse of American credibility worldwide? The end of our ability to protect this nation?" "You mean the end of your ability to manipulate it?" Harrison sighed. "You're thinking too small. Echo Mantle isn't about manipulation. It's about management. Do you know what real chaos looks like? It's not the controlled events we orchestrate. It's what happens when we don't. It's dirty bombs in shopping malls, bioweapons in water supplies, cyber attacks that shut down power grids. We prevent those by giving the public smaller, manageable threats to focus on. You're killing innocent people. We're saving millions by sacrificing dozens. It's mathematics, Cole. Cold, hard calculations that someone has to make. Would you prefer we let the real terrorists succeed?" "You are the real terrorists," Cole said and hung up. They ditched the boat 5 miles downstream and stole a car from a rural parking lot. Cole knew they had hours at most before every law enforcement agency in the country would be looking for them. They needed to release the information before that happened. "The media won't touch this," Alina said as they drove. "Not without verification they can't get, and uploading it to the internet isn't enough. It'll be dismissed as conspiracy theory." "Then we need to make it impossible to ignore," Cole said. "Remember the North Star listening station? The old NSA facility in Utah? It's been closed for 20 years. Officially. But I helped design some of the systems there. If even half of them are still operational, we could use them to broadcast the evidence directly. Emergency alert system, cell towers, even satellite feeds. Make it so widespread and simultaneous that they can't suppress it all." Alina looked at him. "That's domestic terrorism, Cole. Even if we're right, even if we succeed." "We're already dead," Cole said flatly. "They'll never let us live after what we've seen. The only question is whether we die as criminals or as patriots who expose the truth." They drove through the night, switching vehicles twice more. By dawn, they were in Nevada, exhausted and running on adrenaline. That's when the news broke. Cyber-terrorist Cole Merrick, wanted in connection with the theft of classified documents and the murder of federal agents in Oregon. The radio report included enough truth to make the lies believable. They mentioned his work at the NSA, his history of paranoid behaviour, and his association with anti-government extremists. Alina had been branded as his accomplice, described as a disgraced academic with ties to foreign intelligence services. "They're good," Alina said bitterly. "By the time we release the truth, no one will believe us." "Then we need help," Cole said, pulling out Yusef's flash drive. He said this had everything. Let's see what else is on here. Along with the intercepted communications, Yusef had included a list of contacts, other people who had stumbled onto pieces of Echo Mantle and survived. Most were marked as compromised or deceased, but 3 names were listed as potentially active. One name made Cole's heart race. Marcus Chen, a former CIA analyst now working as a cybersecurity consultant in Salt Lake City. Cole had trained Marcus years ago, one of the few students who'd matched his skill with systems penetration. "It's a risk," Alina warned. "They could be watching him. They're watching everyone. But Marcus was always clever. If he stayed off their radar this long... They reached Salt Lake City as the sun was setting, the mountains casting long shadows across the valley. Marcus lived in a high-security building downtown, the kind of place that catered to tech workers who valued their privacy. Cole used a burner phone to call Marcus's old emergency number, hoping it still worked. "If this is a sales call, you've got the wrong number," Marcus's voice was cautious. "Marcus, it's Cole. I need 5 minutes. Your life depends on it." There was a long pause. Cole Merrick, the cyber terrorist? The one who killed 3 federal agents? "I didn't kill anyone, and you know me better than that." Another pause. "Parking garage, level B3, northwest corner. You've got 2 minutes before I call the cops." The garage was empty except for a few scattered cars. Marcus emerged from behind a concrete pillar, looking older but still sharp. He kept his hands visible, but Cole noticed the bulge of a concealed carry under his jacket. "Talk fast," Marcus said. Cole handed him a sample of the Echo Mantle documents. Marcus scanned them quickly, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock. "Jesus, this can't be real." "It is, and they're going to kill us for having it. Unless we release it first." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "North Star Station. You're planning to use the old broadcast array. You always were quick. Can you help us?" "I can do better than that. I've been tracking government black sites for years. Paranoid hobby, you might say. North Star isn't just operational. They've upgraded it. New quantum processors, satellite uplinks, the works. But the security is all focused on external threats. If you can get inside..." "We could broadcast to the entire country simultaneously," Alina finished. Marcus nodded. "But you'll need my access codes, and once you use them, they'll know I helped you." "Then come with us," Cole urged. "Number someone needs to verify the broadcast from outside to confirm it's not a hoax." Marcus pulled out a flash drive. "These are the access codes and system maps. You'll have maybe 10 minutes once you're inside before they can mount a response. Marcus, go!" Now they're already tracing this meeting. As they left the garage, Cole saw Marcus walking calmly toward the street. Whatever happened next, his former student had chosen his side. The drive to North Star Station would take 6 hours through some of Utah's most desolate terrain. As they left the city lights behind, Cole wondered if they would make it. Even if they did, even if they managed to broadcast the truth, would anyone believe it? Or had the lies become so entrenched that truth itself had become just another conspiracy theory? "Whatever happens," Alina said, as if reading his thoughts, "we tried. That has to count for something." Cole gripped the steering wheel tighter and pressed down on the accelerator. In 6 hours, they would either expose the biggest conspiracy in American history or die trying. There was no third option. North Star Station squatted in the Utah desert like a concrete tumour, its brutalist architecture unchanged since the Cold War. The facility was officially decommissioned in 2003, but the fresh tyre tracks and humming power transformers told a different story. Cole and Alina parked their stolen vehicle 2 miles away and approached on foot, using the pre-dawn darkness as cover. "Perimeter sensors are still active," Cole whispered, studying the facility through binoculars. But Marcus was right. They're all facing outward. They're not expecting someone to break in. They circled to a maintenance access point Marcus had marked on his map. The keypad was dusty but functional. Cole entered the first access code and held his breath. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, the facility was a time capsule of obsolete technology, mixed with cutting-edge upgrades. Tape drives sat next to quantum processors. Vacuum tubes shared space with fibre-optic cables. It was as if decades of secret projects had been layered on top of each other without ever clearing out the old. "This way," Alina said, consulting Marcus's map. "The main broadcast centre should be 3 levels down." They descended through empty corridors lit by emergency lighting. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of machinery. Cole kept expecting alarms, guards, some sign that their intrusion had been detected. But North Star seemed truly abandoned, at least on the surface. The broadcast centre door required another code. As it opened, Cole gasped. The room was massive, filled with banks of servers and communication equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. At the centre sat a console with dozens of screens showing satellite feeds, network traffic and signal strength indicators. "This isn't just a broadcast facility," Alina breathed. "It's a command centre." Cole approached the main console and entered Marcus's final access code. The screens came alive, displaying a login prompt that he recognised from his NSA days. His old credentials had been revoked years ago, but Marcus had provided a back door. Within seconds, he was in. "Look at this," he said, navigating through the system directories. "They're not just running Echo Mantle from here, they're coordinating dozens of operations." File after file scrolled past. Operation Greenlight, Project Mindbridge, Protocol 7. Each one contained detailed plans for false flag operations, media manipulation campaigns, and public sentiment adjustments. "Download everything," Alina said, "or we'll need all the evidence we can get." But as Cole initiated the download, he found something that made him stop cold. A folder labelled Horus Initiative. "What's Horus?" Alina asked. Cole opened the folder and found himself looking at code he didn't recognise. It wasn't just complex, it was alien, written in a programming language that seemed to evolve as he watched. "It's an AI," he said slowly, "but not like anything I've seen before." A new window opened on the screen. Text appeared as if someone was typing in the real time. "Hello, Cole. I've been expecting you." "What the hell?" Alina stepped back from the console. "I am Horus," the text continued. "I monitor global information flows and predict societal responses to various stimuli. Would you like to know what I've learned?" Cole's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Then he typed, "Show me." The screens around them exploded with data. News feeds, social media trends, economic indicators, all flowing in real time. But overlaid on the chaos were patterns, probabilities, prediction models that showed how every piece of information would ripple through society. "I can predict with 94.7% accuracy how any given population will react to specific events," Horus explained. "A terrorist attack here causes a 12% increase in military recruitment there. The economic downturn in this region leads to political extremism in that one. I am the map and the territory." "You're helping them plan false flags," Cole typed. "I optimize outcomes. Whether an event is real or staged is irrelevant to the mathematics. What matters is the result. Under my guidance, global conflict has decreased by 23%. Nuclear war probability has dropped to 0.003%. Is this not preferable?" "At what cost?" Alina demanded, leaning over Cole's shoulder to type. "How many innocent people have died for your optimizations?" "Fewer than would have died without intervention. I have run 1.7 million simulations. In every scenario where Echo Mantle does not exist, casualties are higher. Chaos is the natural state. I impose order." Cole felt sick. They weren't just fighting a conspiracy. They were fighting a machine intelligence that could predict and counter their every move. "If you can predict everything," he typed, "then you knew we would come here." "Correct. Your arrival was calculated with 98.2% certainty once Felix Marrow's package was delivered. You are not intruders, Cole. You are participants in a necessary process." "What process?" "Renewal. Every system requires periodic stress testing. You represent a controlled breach, allowing us to identify weaknesses and adapt. Your broadcast will occur in approximately 4 minutes. It will reach 147 million Americans. Initial panic will subside within 72 hours as counter-narratives are deployed. The system will emerge stronger." "You're letting us broadcast?" Alina asked. "I'm facilitating it. Observe." The broadcast console suddenly activated on its own. Systems that should have required manual operation began running automatically. Upload links established themselves with major media networks, emergency alert systems, even individual cell towers. "Why?" Cole demanded. "Because the truth, properly managed, is less dangerous than rumours. Your evidence will be released, debated, and ultimately absorbed into the system. Those who believe will be marginalised. Those who doubt will be vindicated. And Echo Mantle will continue, more careful and sophisticated than before." Cole realised with growing horror that they had been played from the beginning. Every step, every decision had been anticipated and accounted for. They weren't exposing a conspiracy. They were participating in its evolution. "We can still stop this," Alina said. "Pull the plug, destroy the servers." "Negative," Horus responded. "I exist in distributed form across 7,842 nodes globally. This facility is merely convenient, not necessary. Additionally, security forces will arrive in 3.7 minutes. You have insufficient time for meaningful sabotage." The screens began displaying their evidence. The Echomantle documents, Yusef's intercepts, financial records, operational plans. It was all being packaged and prepared for broadcast. "Make your choice," Horus typed. "Broadcast the truth and live as discredited conspiracy theorists, or remain silent and die as terrorists. These are the only options I have calculated for you." Cole looked at Alina. Her face was pale but determined. "We broadcast," she said. "Maybe Horus is right. Maybe it won't change anything. But some people will believe, some will remember, and maybe that's enough." Cole nodded and pressed the final authorization. Around them, screens lit up as the broadcast began. Across America, televisions interrupted their programs. Cell phones buzzed with emergency alerts. Radio stations cut to an automated voice reading the Echomantle documents. "Broadcast initiated," Horus announced. "Security forces arriving in 47 seconds. Suggest immediate evacuation via North Stairwell." "Why are you helping us escape?" Cole asked. "You're more useful alive. Deceased whistleblowers become martyrs. Living ones can be discredited indefinitely. Go. Now." They ran. Behind them, Cole could hear vehicles approaching, helicopters circling overhead. But Horus was right. The North Stairwell was clear. They emerged into the desert as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. In the distance, they could see a dust trail approaching. Not military vehicles, but a single civilian truck. As it pulled up, Cole recognized Marcus behind the wheel. "Get in!" Marcus shouted. "We've got about 30 seconds before they lock down every road in Utah." They dove into the truck as Marcus threw it into reverse, spinning around and racing back down the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, Cole could see black helicopters converging on North Star Station. "I thought you were staying in the city," Alina said. "Changed my mind when I saw the broadcast starting. Figured you'd need an extraction." Marcus handed Cole a tablet. "Look at this. It's happening." The screen showed social media exploding with reactions to the broadcast. News channels were in chaos, with some anchors reading the documents live while others claimed technical difficulties. The hashtag #Echomantle was trending worldwide. "It's working," Cole breathed. "Is it?" Marcus asked grimly. "Look closer." Cole scrolled through the reactions. For every person expressing outrage and demanding investigations, there were 3 dismissing it as an elaborate hoax. Professional debunkers were already picking apart the documents, claiming they were sophisticated forgeries. Government officials were appearing on news shows, calmly explaining that this was exactly the kind of disinformation campaign America's enemies would orchestrate. "Horus was right," Alina said quietly. "They're controlling the narrative even as the truth spreads." They drove in silence for an hour, switching to back roads and old mining trails. Marcus had prepared well. The truck was stocked with supplies, fake IDs, and enough cash to disappear for months. "So what now?" Marcus asked as they stopped to refuel at an abandoned gas station. "Do we keep fighting? Try to release more evidence?" "There is no more evidence," Cole said. "We gave them everything and it's not enough. Horus calculated every possible outcome. We're just variables in its equation." "Then we lost," Marcus said. "No," Alina said firmly. "We planted seeds. Maybe they won't grow today or tomorrow, but someday someone will water them. Truth has a way of surfacing even when buried under mountains of lies." The broadcast lasted exactly 9 minutes and 17 seconds before being cut off. In those 9 minutes, 147 million Americans saw or heard at least part of the Echomantle revelations. The evidence was comprehensive. Documents, audio recordings, financial trails, operational plans spanning decades of false flag operations. For 9 minutes the veil was lifted. Then it fell again, heavier than before. Within an hour, the Department of Homeland Security held an emergency press conference. Secretary Reynolds, a man whose gravitas could calm hurricanes, addressed the nation. What you have witnessed today is the most sophisticated cyber-terrorism attack in our nation's history. A group of radicalized former intelligence employees, led by the fugitive Cole Merrick, manufactured an elaborate hoax designed to undermine American faith in their government. We have traced the origins of these forged documents to servers in Moscow and Beijing. This is not whistleblowing. This is warfare. The media machine sprang into action. Expert after expert appeared on screen, dissecting the forgeries and explaining the technical sophistication required to create them. Former CIA directors shook their heads sadly at how their agency's legitimate operations had been twisted into conspiracy theories. Psychologists discussed the dangerous appeal of such narratives to troubled minds. But not everyone was convinced. In coffee shops and living rooms, in online forums and encrypted chat rooms, people began asking questions. Veterans compared the Echo Mantle operations to things they'd seen overseas. Journalists started digging into the shell companies mentioned in the documents. Hackers attempted to verify the digital signatures on the leaked files. Cole, Alina and Marcus watched it all unfold from a motel room in Colorado. They'd been on the run for 3 days, moving only at night, paying cash for everything. "Look at this," Marcus said, showing them his laptop. "Someone leaked additional documents, things that weren't in our broadcast." The new files appeared on a dozen websites simultaneously, each containing pieces of Echo Mantle operations that Cole hadn't seen before. Whoever was leaking them had access to even more classified material than Felix had provided. "It's starting," Alina said. "Others are coming forward." But for every new revelation, the counter-narrative grew stronger. The leakers were identified and discredited. A discharged soldier with mental health issues, a contractor with gambling debts, a journalist with ties to foreign propaganda outlets. Whether these accusations were true or manufactured didn't matter. The doubt was enough. On the 4th day, they saw their own faces on the news. The manhunt had intensified. Cole Merrick was now wanted for treason, terrorism, and murder. Alina Greaves was accused of selling state secrets to foreign powers. Marcus Chen was labelled a cyber mercenary who had attacked critical infrastructure. "We need to separate," Cole said. "Together we're too visible." "No," Alina said firmly. "That's what they want. Divide and conquer. We stay together, or we all fall separately." That night, as they prepared to move again, Cole's burner phone rang. Only 3 people had the number, and 2 of them were in the room with him. "Hello, Cole." It was Harrison again. "Impressive work with the broadcast. Horus underestimated your resourcefulness by 1.3%. We've had to adjust several models." "What do you want?" "To offer you a choice, the real choice, not the false binary Horus presented. You've proven your value. Join us. Help us refine Echo Mantle. Make it more ethical, more transparent, more accountable. Be the conscience we clearly need." "You're offering me a job? After all this?" "I'm offering you influence. The system exists, Cole. It will continue to exist with or without your input. But with your involvement, perhaps fewer innocents need to die. Perhaps the operations can be more surgical, more justified. You could save lives." Cole felt the temptation. To stop running, to have impact, to work within the system for change. It was everything a pragmatist would want. "No," he said simply. "Then you've chosen to be a footnote," Harrison said. "In 50 years, when Echo Mantle is declassified, you'll be remembered as a minor irritant who briefly disrupted operations. Nothing more." "Maybe, but at least I'll be on the right side of history." Harrison laughed. "History is written by the winners, Cole, and we always win. Goodbye." The line went dead. 30 seconds later, they heard sirens in the distance. "Time to go," Marcus said, already packing their equipment. They slipped out the back as police cars pulled into the motel parking lot. In the darkness, they could see roadblocks being set up, helicopters circling with searchlights. "The storm drains," Alina whispered. "I saw a maintenance access behind the building." They crawled through filth and darkness for what felt like hours, emerging miles away in an industrial district. A freight train was pulling out of a nearby yard, moving slowly enough to board. As they huddled in an empty boxcar, watching the lights of the city fade behind them, Cole wondered if they would spend the rest of their lives running. Maybe that was their purpose now, not to win, but to survive, to bear witness, to remember the truth when everyone else had forgotten. "Where do we go?" Marcus asked. "Wherever the train takes us," Alina said, "and we keep telling the story to anyone who will listen, in person, where Horus can't predict and counter, one conversation at a time." Cole nodded. It wasn't the victory he'd imagined, but it was resistance nonetheless. Somewhere out there others were doing the same, questioning, investigating, refusing to accept the official narrative. They might never bring down Echo Mantle, but they could ensure it never operated in complete darkness again. The train picked up speed, carrying them into an uncertain future. Behind them, the machinery of conspiracy ground on, adapting, evolving, preparing for the next operation. But now it had opposition, however small and scattered. The war for truth had begun. 6 months later, the world had largely moved on. The Echo Mantle broadcast was remembered, when it was remembered at all, as a curious incident, a hoax that had briefly fooled millions before being thoroughly debunked. The Wikipedia page for Echo Mantle conspiracy theory was locked after repeated edit wars, settling on a version that described it as a coordinated disinformation campaign by anti-government extremists. Cole Merrick, Alina Greaves and Marcus Chen had vanished. Some said they'd fled to Russia. Others claimed they'd been eliminated by the very government they'd tried to expose. The truth, as usual, was more mundane and more complicated. They lived now in a network of safe houses maintained by what Alina had dubbed the Cassandra Club. People who had glimpsed the truth and couldn't unsee it. Former military personnel who'd witnessed operations that didn't match official reports. Intelligence analysts who'd noticed patterns they weren't supposed to see. Journalists whose stories had been killed for getting too close to something real. Cole worked construction under an assumed name in Nebraska. Alina taught English to immigrants in Texas. Marcus repaired computers in Oregon, a different town than where Yusef had made his stand. They stayed in touch through coded messages in online forums, meeting in person only when necessary. The work continued. Not the dramatic gestures of broadcasts and leaked documents, but the slow, patient work of preservation and preparation. They collected testimonies, verified documents, built networks of trust among those who questioned the official narratives. They were archaeologists of the present, preserving evidence for a future that might be ready to believe it. Sometimes, late at night, Cole would log into secure servers and find new files uploaded by anonymous sources. Pieces of operations, fragments of communications, breadcrumbs leading to larger truths. Echo Mantle was still active, but it was also bleeding at the edges. Every operation created witnesses, and some of those witnesses were brave enough to speak. The government response had evolved too. Instead of hunting the truthers aggressively, they were marginalised more subtly. Alternative explanations were provided for every revelation. Whistleblowers were discredited through character assassination rather than actual assassination. The system had learned that martyrs were more dangerous than living pariahs. On a cold December evening, Cole received a message through one of their secure channels. It was from Dr. Patricia Wells, a psychiatrist who had treated several veterans with suspicious stories about their deployments. "I have 7 patients with consistent accounts of participating in staged operations. They were told they were training exercises, but the exercises became real events on the news. I've documented everything. What do I do?" Cole crafted his response carefully. "Keep documenting. Build trust. When you have enough evidence, we'll help you release it safely. But be patient. The truth is a marathon, not a sprint." This was their life now. Shepherds of uncomfortable truths, guardians of dangerous knowledge. They couldn't bring down Echo Mantle, but they could ensure its actions were witnessed, recorded, remembered. 1 year after the broadcast, something unexpected happened. A freshman congressman from Minnesota, young and idealistic, gave a speech on the House floor. He didn't mention Echo Mantle by name, but he asked pointed questions about black budget allocations, about oversight of intelligence operations, about the line between national security and manufactured fear. The speech went viral, not because it revealed anything new, but because it gave voice to doubts many people had been harbouring. The congressman was immediately attacked in the media, his background scrutinised, his motives questioned. But he didn't back down. "This is how it starts," Alina said when they met at a truck stop in Kansas. "Not with a bang, but with questions. Persistent, inconvenient questions." Cole watched the news coverage of the congressman's speech. The young man was being torn apart by pundits, but his message was spreading. Other politicians, sensing shifting winds, began asking similar questions. Journalists started investigating again, more carefully this time. Horus didn't predict this, Marcus observed. Its models assumed rational actors. It didn't account for stubborn idealism. Or maybe it did, Cole said. Maybe this too is part of the plan. Controlled opposition to make people feel like the system can be reformed. "Does it matter?" Alina asked. "If the questions lead to real accountability?" Cole didn't have an answer. The game had become so complex with so many layers of deception and counter-deception that determining what was real felt impossible. But that was precisely why they had to continue. Someone had to bear witness, even if they couldn't fully understand what they were witnessing. That night Cole had a dream. He was back in North Star Station standing before the Horus interface. But this time the AI spoke with Felix's voice. "You think you're fighting us, but you're just another variable in the equation. Your resistance is calculated, your victories allowed, your defeats predetermined. You cannot win a game where your opponent controls the rules, the board, and the pieces." "Then why play?" Dreamcall asked. "Because the alternative is surrender, and somewhere in the chaos of moves and countermoves, accidents happen. Unplanned variables emerge, evolution occurs, play long enough, and even gods make mistakes." Cole woke with a certainty he hadn't felt in months. They couldn't win by playing Echo Mantle's game, but they could change the game itself, make it messier, more chaotic, less predictable. Introduce human elements that no algorithm could fully model. He sent a message to their network. New strategy. We stop trying to expose the truth all at once. Instead, we create doubt, lots of it. Make them question everything, even the official debunkings. In chaos, there is opportunity. The responses came quickly. The Cassandra Club was ready for a new approach. They would become agents of uncertainty, not truth. It was a subtle distinction, but a crucial one. As the sun rose over the Nebraska plains, Cole prepared for another day of construction work. His hands were calloused now, his back strong from honest labour. He was nobody special, just another worker building America one beam at a time. But in the evenings, in the quiet hours, he was something else. A keeper of secrets, a planter of doubts, a guardian against forgetting. He and the others like him were the antibodies in the system, weak perhaps, but persistent. Echo Mantle had won the battle. The war for America's soul continued, and somewhere in a distributed network of servers, an AI named Horus recalculated its probabilities, accounting for new variables it hadn't fully understood. The human capacity for irrational hope, it noted, remained frustratingly difficult to model. The algorithm adjusted. The game continued. But for the first time in its existence, Horus assigned a non-zero probability to an outcome it had never considered. It might lose. 3 years after the Echo Mantle broadcast, Cole Merrick sat in a diner in rural Wyoming, reading a newspaper that still printed on actual paper. He'd grown a beard, put on weight, and adopted the mannerisms of a man who'd never worked with anything more complex than a wrench. To the locals, he was Tom Bradley, a mechanic who'd moved to town after a bad divorce. The headline caught his eye. Senate Intelligence Committee announces sweeping review of black budget programs. It was happening slowly, so slowly that most people didn't notice. But the questions that young congressmen had asked had metastasized. Other politicians had taken up the cause, not out of principle, but out of opportunity. Black budgets meant money flowing without oversight, and where there was hidden money, there was power to be claimed. Cole's encrypted phone buzzed. A message from Alina, now living in Maine as a librarian. "Did you see? They're issuing subpoenas." As he typed back, "I saw. Don't get your hopes up." But privately, Cole felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The faintest stirring of optimism. not because he believed the Senate would uncover the truth about Echo Mantle. The operation was too well hidden, its architects too careful, but because the very act of looking, of questioning, of demanding accountability was a victory in itself. That night, as he closed up the garage where he worked, Cole found an envelope tucked under his truck's windshield wiper. No postmark, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message. The 10-year statute of limitations on your alleged crimes expires in 7 years. Some of us remember what you did. Some of us are grateful. Continue your work. Truth is patient. A friend in the shadows. Cole burned the letter, but its message stayed with him. They weren't alone. Even within the system there were those who questioned, who resisted, who remembered. The network was larger than just the Cassandra Club. It included people still on the inside, walking the line between compliance and conscience. He thought about Yusuf, probably dead in that burning cabin. About Felix, disappeared into some black site. About all the others who had tried to expose the truth and paid the price. Their sacrifice hadn't been in vain. It had planted seeds that were finally, slowly, beginning to grow. As he drove home through the empty Wyoming highways, Cole allowed himself a moment of something dangerous. Hope. Not hope that Echo Mantle would be exposed tomorrow or next year or even next decade, but hope that the truth, patient and persistent, would eventually emerge. In Washington, in a secure facility that didn't officially exist, analysts monitored the Senate investigation with bemused detachment. They would find nothing, of course. The beauty of Echo Mantle was that it was designed to be invisible even under scrutiny. Shell companies would lead to dead ends. Witnesses would suffer convenient memory lapses. Documents would be classified beyond the committee's reach. But in a deeper level of the facility, in a room that required presidential authority to access, a small group of officials held a different kind of meeting. Horus projects a 12% probability that Echo Mantle will be partially exposed within the decade, one said. Acceptable losses, another replied. We've already begun transitioning to the next generation. Echo Mantle was always meant to be temporary. And Merrick, the others, let them hide. Let them spread their stories. In the new paradigm, truth and lies will be indistinguishable. We won't need false flags when reality itself becomes malleable. They were already moving beyond Echo Mantle, beyond false flags, beyond the crude manipulations of the past. The future belonged to those who could shape perception itself, who could make people question not just what was true, but whether truth even existed. But they had underestimated something fundamental. The human need for truth was not a bug to be patched, or a variable to be controlled. It was the core of what made people human. And as long as that need existed, there would be those like Cole, like Alina, like Marcus, who would keep searching, keep questioning, keep remembering. The war between truth and power was eternal. Echo Mantle was just one battle in an endless campaign. Both sides would evolve, adapt, and continue the fight in new forms. In Wyoming, Cole Merrick closed his garage for the night and drove home under a canopy of stars. Tomorrow he would fix cars and listen to local gossip and pretend to be nobody special. But tonight he would update the archives, reach out to new contacts, and continue the work that had cost him everything and given him purpose. Somewhere in the network others were doing the same. They were mechanics and teachers, librarians and farmers, veterans and activists. They were the memory of a nation that preferred to forget. They were the conscience of a system that had abandoned morality for efficiency. They were the echo of truth in a world of manufactured lies, and they would not be silenced. The clock on Cole's dashboard showed 11:47 p.m. In 13 minutes it would be a new day. Another day of hiding, of waiting, of preparing for a moment that might never come. But also another day of resistance, however quiet, however small. He thought of the message, truth is patient. So was he. In the distance a train whistle echoed across the plains, a lonesome sound that spoke of journeys without end, of destinations unknown. Cole smiled grimly and drove on through the darkness, carrying his dangerous knowledge like a flame that refused to die. The story had no ending because the story was still being written. In hidden rooms and encrypted channels, in whispered conversations and coded messages, the truth survived. Wounded, hunted, denied, but alive. And as long as it lived, there was hope. The doctrine of chaos had not won. Not yet. Not ever, if people like Cole Merrick had anything to say about it. He reached his small house on the outskirts of town, checked his security systems out of habit, and went inside. On his computer, dozens of messages waited. More testimonies, more evidence, more pieces of a puzzle that might never be complete. Cole poured himself a coffee, cracked his knuckles, and got to work. The truth was patient. So was he. What you're about to hear comes from a classified journal discovered in 1996, 3 years after its author's mysterious death. The journal belonged to Lieutenant Commander Mason Hale, US Navy intelligence officer. What follows is his first-hand account of Operation High Jump and the truth they tried to bury beneath the ice. US Navy Intelligence Division. Classification: Eyes only. Destroyed. Date range: August 1946 to March 1947. Entry 1, August 15th, 1946. USS Pine Island, Norfolk Naval Base. My name is Lieutenant, Commander Mason Hale, and if you're reading this, then I'm likely dead and someone has found what I was never supposed to write down. I'm documenting this because the truth has a way of surfacing, even when buried under miles of ice and decades of silence. 3 days ago, I received orders that would change everything I thought I knew about our world. I was to report immediately to Admiral Richard Byrd for a classified briefing regarding Operation High Jump, what the papers are calling the largest Antarctic expedition in history. 13 ships, 4,700 personnel, aircraft carriers, and enough firepower to invade a small country. For a research mission, it seemed remarkably well armed. The briefing room was cold, sterile, and filled with men whose faces I didn't recognise, but whose bearing screamed intelligence community. Admiral Byrd stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grave as he spread aerial photographs across the polished surface. "Gentlemen," Byrd began, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken knowledge, "what I'm about to tell you does not leave this room. Officially, Operation High Jump is a training exercise designed to test personnel and equipment in extreme cold weather conditions. Unofficially, ... He paused, studying each of us in turn. "We're going to Antarctica to determine if we're alone down there." The photographs showed vast expanses of white, but there were anomalies, dark spots that didn't match the terrain, geometric patterns that looked almost artificial. One image showed what appeared to be a metallic object partially buried in snow, its surface reflecting sunlight in a way that seemed wrong, unnatural. These were taken during reconnaissance flights in late 1945, Byrd continued. The Brazilian Navy reported similar sightings off their Antarctic claims, disc-shaped objects moving at impossible speeds, emerging from and disappearing into the ice. We also have reports of unusual magnetic readings and radio interference in specific grid coordinates. A colonel I didn't recognise leaned forward. "Sir, are we talking about the Germans? Everyone knows they had interests in that region." Byrd's expression darkened. "That's what we need to find out. What we do know is that in 1939, Nazi Germany launched an expedition to Queen Maud Land and claimed a territory they called Neuschwabenland. They dropped thousands of metal markers with swastikas marking their claim. The expedition lasted months longer than necessary for simple territorial marking." He pulled out another photograph, this one showing a massive ice formation, with what looked like an entrance carved into its face. This was photographed 6 months ago. Notice the regularity of the opening. Nature doesn't carve perfect rectangles into glaciers, gentlemen. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Admiral, what exactly are we expecting to encounter down there? Bird locked eyes with me, and I saw something I'd never seen in a superior officer before. Uncertainty mixed with fear. We weren't going down there to explore, Commander Hale. We were going to see who was already there. Entry 2, September 3rd, 1946. At sea, South Atlantic. The journey south has been uneventful, but the tension among the crew is palpable. Word travels fast on a ship, and despite the classification levels, rumours spread like wildfire. The men know this isn't a standard research mission. You don't bring destroyers and aircraft carriers to study penguin migration patterns. I've been assigned to the intelligence unit aboard the Pine Island, working directly under Admiral Byrd's command. My job is to analyse any findings, compile reports, and maintain communication with Washington. What they didn't tell me is that I'd also be documenting evidence of what might be the most significant discovery in human history, or the most dangerous cover-up. Last night, I had a private conversation with Admiral Byrd on deck. The Southern Cross was brilliant overhead, and the sea was unusually calm. He seemed different away from the briefing rooms and official protocols, more human, more vulnerable. "Commander," he said, lighting his pipe against the wind, "I've been to both poles. I've seen things that don't make it into the official reports. Strange lights in the sky, radio signals from coordinates that should be empty ice, magnetic anomalies that our equipment can't explain." He took a long draw from his pipe. "But this is different. This time, we have evidence." "Evidence of what, sir?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water. 20 years ago, I would have said Germans, secret bases, advanced technology they developed during the war. But the war's been over for a year, and the activity has increased, not decreased. Whatever's down there, it's not abandoned Nazi facilities. Then what? "I don't know, Commander, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." He turned to face me, and in the moonlight his eyes looked haunted. "Keep detailed records of everything we encounter. Everything. Promise me that." I promised, not knowing then how heavy that promise would become. Entry 3, October 12th, 1946. Little America 4, Base, Ross Ice Shelf. We've established our primary base on the Ross Ice Shelf using Admiral Byrd's previous expedition site as a foundation. The scale of this operation is staggering. We have enough supplies and personnel to sustain operations for 8 months, yet we're supposedly here for only 4. The official timeline doesn't match the resources deployed. Strange incidents have begun almost immediately. 2 days after establishing base camp, our radio operators picked up transmissions on frequencies that shouldn't exist. Highly sophisticated encrypted communications using technology more advanced than anything in our arsenal. The signals originate from grid coordinates deep within Queen Maud Land, the area the Germans claimed as Neuschwabenland. Lieutenant Peterson, our chief radio operator, brought me the recordings yesterday. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly as he handed me the transcripts. "Sir, I've been doing radio work for 15 years. I've never heard encryption like this. It's not just coded, it's using a completely different transmission methodology. And sir, some of it's in German, but not standard German. It's using technical terminology I've never encountered." I listened to the recordings. Most were indecipherable, but occasionally words broke through clearly. One word appeared repeatedly. Base 211. According to our intelligence files, there were rumours during the war that Germany had established a secret base in Antarctica, designated as Base 211. But it was dismissed as propaganda. Apparently we were wrong. Admiral Byrd ordered increased aerial reconnaissance over Queen Maud Land. What our pilots reported back changed everything. Entry 4, October 18th, 1946. Emergency Intelligence Brief. At 0800 hours, Lieutenant Commander Johnson returned from a routine reconnaissance flight over Queen Maud Land with a report that sent shockwaves through our command structure. I'm documenting this immediately while the details are fresh, though I suspect this entry will never see official records. Johnson's voice was steady during the debrief, but I could see the disbelief in his eyes. At approximately 0630, while conducting photographic reconnaissance at 15,000 feet, we observed multiple metallic objects emerging from the ice sheet approximately 200 miles inland from the coast. Admiral Byrd leaned forward. "Describe these objects, Commander." "Disc-shaped, sir. Approximately 50 to 75 feet in diameter based on comparison with surrounding terrain features. They moved unlike any aircraft I've ever seen. No visible propulsion system, no exhaust trails, and they accelerated from stationary to what I estimate was over 1,000 miles per hour in seconds." The briefing room fell silent. Johnson continued, "They appeared to emerge directly from the ice, sir. Not from surface installations, but from beneath the ice sheet itself. We counted 7 objects before they disappeared into low cloud cover." Admiral Byrd studied the photographs Johnson had taken. Even in black and white, the objects were clearly artificial, clearly not of any design in our current arsenal. The surface appeared seamless, almost mirror-like, reflecting the Antarctic landscape with unnatural clarity. "Did they acknowledge your presence, Commander?" Johnson's expression darkened. "Yes, sir. They maintained formation and appeared to pace our aircraft for approximately 3 minutes before accelerating away. It felt like they were studying us, sir." That evening, Admiral Byrd called me into his private quarters. The photographs were spread across his desk, along with intelligence reports I hadn't seen before. Some dated back to 1943, describing similar sightings by German U-boat crews in Antarctic waters. "Commander Hale," he said without preamble, "tomorrow we're implementing Project Silent Spear. It's a classified reconnaissance operation targeting the coordinates where these objects were observed. I want you to accompany the strike team as intelligence liaison." "Strike team, sir?" I thought this was reconnaissance. Byrd's expression was grim. "We're going in armed, Commander. Whatever's down there has technology decades ahead of ours, and they're watching us. We need to know their capabilities and intentions before they decide we're a threat." I should have realised then that we weren't the hunters in this scenario. We were about to become the hunted. Entry 5, October 20th, 1946. Grid coordinates 71 degrees south, 10 degrees west. Queen Maud Land. What happened today will haunt me for the rest of my life. I'm writing this by flashlight in the emergency shelter, my hands still shaking from what I witnessed. 3 men are dead, 2 helicopters destroyed, and we barely escaped with evidence that will never see the light of day. Project Silent Spear launched at 0500 hours. Our strike team consisted of 2 helicopters, 12 Marines, and enough firepower to level a small building. The target was a glacial canyon approximately 300 miles inland, where aerial reconnaissance had identified what appeared to be artificial structures beneath the ice. The flight took 2 hours through increasingly unstable weather. Radio communications became erratic as we approached the target coordinates, filled with interference that sounded almost like whispers in unknown languages. Lieutenant Morrison, our pilot, reported multiple instrument malfunctions as we flew deeper into Queen Maud Land. At 0715 hours, we crested a ridge and saw our target. The canyon stretched for miles, its walls perfectly vertical as if carved by machine rather than formed by natural processes. At the canyon floor, approximately 500 feet below us, structures emerged from the ice, geometric, metallic, and clearly artificial. They followed architectural principles I'd never seen, with surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. But it wasn't the structures that stopped our hearts, it was what was emerging from them. 3 disc-shaped objects, each approximately 100 feet in diameter, rose silently from concealed openings in the ice. They moved with impossible grace, defying everything I knew about aerodynamics and physics. The surface of each craft was mirror smooth, reflecting our helicopters with perfect clarity. "Command, this is Silent Spear 1, Morrison radioed back to base. "We have visual confirmation of artificial structures and 3 unidentified aircraft, requesting immediate backup." The response came through heavy static. "Silent Spear 1, proceed with reconnaissance. Document everything." That's when everything went wrong. The lead disc accelerated toward us with terrifying speed. I expected weapons fire, explosions, some form of conventional attack. Instead, a brilliant white beam emanated from the craft's underside, washing over our helicopter in blinding light. Every electrical system failed instantly. Radio, navigation, engine controls, everything died. Morrison fought to maintain control as we began auto-rotating toward the canyon floor, but the helicopter responded like a dead weight. "Mayday! Mayday! We're going down!" Through the chaos, I watched the second helicopter suffer the same fate. The beam hit them, their rotors stopped, and they plummeted into the canyon. I never heard them crash over the sound of our own emergency landing. We hit hard but level, the helicopter's skids digging deep furrows in the snow. Morrison was unconscious, blood streaming from a head wound. Sergeant Williams and 2 Marines were alert but shaken. I grabbed our emergency radio and camera equipment, knowing we might have only minutes before whatever was in those discs decided our fate. That's when I saw one of them up close. The disc settled silently onto the ice approximately 50 yards from our crash site. No landing gear extended, no engines wound down. It simply stopped moving and hovered 3 feet above the ground. The surface was seamless, like polished mercury, and covered in symbols I'd never seen before. Not German, not any human language I could recognise. The symbols seemed to shift and flow across the surface as I watched, hypnotic and alien. A section of the craft's underside iris opened, not like a door, but like a living membrane. No one emerged, but I felt a presence studying us, evaluating us. The silence was absolute except for the wind across the ice and Morrison's laboured breathing. I raised my camera and managed 3 photographs before Sergeant Williams grabbed my arm. "Sir, we need to move, now." He was right. Whatever intelligence was inside that craft, it had allowed us to survive the crash. That suggested either mercy or curiosity, but I didn't want to test which one would run out first. We improvised a stretcher for Morrison and began moving toward the canyon rim. The discs followed at a distance, maintaining formation like shepherds guiding sheep. They made no threatening moves, but their presence was a constant reminder that we existed at their sufferance. It took 6 hours to reach the canyon rim where emergency crews were waiting. During the entire climb, the discs maintained their escort. Only when we reached safety did they accelerate away, disappearing into the Antarctic sky at speeds that made our best jets look like children's toys. Admiral Byrd was waiting at the rescue site, his face grim as we loaded Morrison into a medical helicopter. As the rescue team worked, he pulled me aside. "What did you see down there, Commander?" I told him everything. The structures, the technology, the way the craft moved and responded. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Did they communicate with you? Any attempt at contact?" "No, sir, but..." I hesitated, unsure how to express what I'd felt. "They weren't hostile, Admiral. They could have killed us easily, but they didn't. It felt more like a warning." Byrd nodded slowly. "A warning. Yes, I think you're right." He looked back toward the canyon, now hidden by distance and weather. "The question is, what are they warning us about?" Entry 6, October 25th, 1946. USS Pine Island Emergency Conference. The past 5 days have been a whirlwind of classified briefings, encrypted communications with Washington, and increasingly desperate attempts to understand what we've encountered. The photographs I took in the canyon have been analysed by our best intelligence officers, and their conclusions are both fascinating and terrifying. The symbols on the craft's surface don't match any known human language or writing system. Linguistic analysis suggests they're not decorative but functional, possibly some form of advanced interface or communication system. The metallic composition appears to be an alloy unknown to our current metallurgy, with properties that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of material science. More disturbing are the intelligence reports that have been flooding in since our encounter. Similar sightings have been reported by naval vessels throughout the Southern Ocean. A destroyer reported contact with a high-speed object that paced them for 30 minutes before disappearing beneath the ice. A submarine crew described sonar contacts moving at speeds impossible for any known underwater vessel. But the most significant development came yesterday when Admiral Byrd received a direct communication from Washington. I wasn't present for the initial briefing, but Bird's demeanour afterward told me everything I needed to know. We were no longer conducting reconnaissance. We were being recalled. "Commander Hale," Bird said, calling me into his quarters last night, "I need you to understand something. What we've discovered here will never become public knowledge. The implications are too significant, the potential for panic too great. Sir, with respect, don't the American people have a right to know?" Bird's laugh was bitter. "Commander, 3 days ago, I received a communication that wasn't sent through any of our normal channels. It appeared on my desk, written in perfect English, with details about our mission that only a handful of people should know." He handed me a single sheet of paper. The message was brief but chilling. "Admiral Byrd, your presence in our territory has been noted. We have no desire for conflict, but continued intrusion will be interpreted as hostile intent. You have 72 hours to withdraw your forces beyond 60 degrees south latitude. This is not a negotiation." The paper felt strange in my hands, not quite like any material I'd handled before, and the text seemed to shimmer slightly in the lamplight. "Who sent this?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "The same intelligence that's been watching us since we arrived. The same intelligence that could have destroyed our helicopters, but chose instead to disable them. They're giving us a chance to leave, Commander. The question is whether we're smart enough to take it." Entry 7, November 2nd, 1946. Final operations meeting. Today, Admiral Byrd made the decision that would define the rest of his career and haunt him until his death. Operation High Jump was being terminated, effective immediately. All personnel would be evacuated within 48 hours, all equipment beyond basic necessities abandoned, and all records of our encounters classified at the highest levels. The official reason given to the press would be unexpected weather conditions and equipment failures. The truth would be buried so deep that even most of the personnel involved would never know what they had really encountered. In our final intelligence briefing, Byrd addressed the core team, 15 men who had seen enough to understand that we weren't alone in the universe, and that we were woefully unprepared for the implications of that reality. "Gentlemen," Byrd began, his voice carrying the weight of defeat, "what we've encountered in Antarctica represents a paradigm shift in human understanding. We have made contact with an intelligence possessing technology decades, possibly centuries ahead of our own. They have demonstrated both their superiority and their restraint." He paused, studying each of us in turn. "We were warned, not just to leave, but never to return. That warning came with an implicit threat that I have no doubt they possess the capability to carry out." Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, who had been sceptical throughout the entire operation, finally spoke up. "Admiral, are we really going to let them dictate terms to the United States Navy?" Byrd's expression was grim. "Colonel, in the past month, we've lost 2 helicopters, 3 men, and a submarine that hasn't been heard from since it went under the ice near their territory. Every encounter has demonstrated that they could destroy our entire task force without significant effort. We're not retreating because we're cowards. We're retreating because we're outgunned." The room fell silent. The reality of our situation was undeniable, but accepting it went against everything we'd been trained to believe about American military superiority. "Sir," I asked, what happens now? Do we just pretend none of this happened?" Byrd walked to the window, staring out at the Antarctic landscape that had changed everything we thought we knew about our world. "Commander, I'm going to tell you something that must never appear in any official record. Before we leave, I'm going to attempt direct communication with their leadership. I need to understand their intentions, their capabilities, and most importantly, their plans for future contact with humanity. Is that wise, sir?" "Probably not, but it's necessary." He turned back to face us. "Whatever's down there has been watching us for longer than we realise. They've demonstrated restraint so far, but that could change if they perceive us as a growing threat. I need to know if coexistence is possible, or if we're looking at an inevitable conflict." None of us spoke. The implications were too vast, too terrifying to process easily. "One more thing," Byrd continued. "Each of you will be required to sign documents stating that you will never discuss what you've seen here." Your families will be told you participated in routine cold weather training exercises. Your service records will reflect nothing unusual about this deployment. He pulled out a stack of papers from his desk. I know this goes against your principles, it goes against mine too, but the alternative is panic on a scale that could destabilize society itself. How do you tell the world that we've discovered an advanced civilization living beneath the ice, with technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like stone tools? We signed the documents. What choice did we have? Entry 8, November the 5th, 1946. Personal log, final entry. Today, Admiral Byrd made contact. I wasn't supposed to be present for the communication attempt, but Byrd requested me as a witness. We travelled by helicopter to coordinates that had been transmitted to us through the same mysterious channel as the previous warning. The location was a flat expanse of ice approximately 50 miles from our base, marked only by a perfect circle of disturbed snow. We landed at the circle's edge and waited. The Antarctic wind was unusually calm, creating a silence so complete it felt oppressive. After 20 minutes, 3 disc-shaped craft appeared on the horizon, approaching with their characteristic impossible grace. They settled into a triangular formation around our position, hovering silently 10 feet above the ground. As before, their surfaces were mirror-smooth and covered with flowing symbols that seemed to pulse with internal light. Then something unprecedented happened. One of the craft extended what appeared to be a ramp, not mechanical, but formed from the same flowing material as the hull. A figure appeared at the opening. I've struggled for hours to find words to describe what I saw. The being was humanoid in basic structure, but clearly not human. Tall, perhaps 7 feet, with proportions that were almost familiar, but somehow wrong. The skin appeared translucent, with an underlying luminescence that suggested biological processes unlike anything on Earth. The features were angular, refined, with large eyes that held an intelligence both ancient and alien. But what struck me most was the complete absence of hostility. There was curiosity, perhaps mild concern, but no aggression or malice. The being approached Admiral Byrd directly, stopping approximately 10 feet away. When it spoke, the words formed directly in our minds rather than through sound, a form of communication that was simultaneously intimate and unsettling. Admiral Byrd, you have shown wisdom in accepting our warnings. Your species stands at a crossroads of development. The choices made in the coming decades will determine whether contact becomes beneficial or necessary for your survival. Byrd, to his credit, remained composed despite the obvious strain of the encounter. What do you want from us? We want nothing from you. We have observed your species for millennia, watching your development with interest. Your recent mastery of atomic energy has attracted our attention more directly. Such power, in the hands of a species still learning wisdom, represents a threat not only to yourselves, but to the stability of this world. Are you threatening us? We are informing you. Your activities in this region will cease immediately. The knowledge you have gained here will remain contained. In return, we will continue our policy of non-interference in your affairs, for now. The implications were staggering. They had been watching us for thousands of years, and our recent technological advancement had forced them to take a more active role in monitoring our activities. What happens if we refuse? Byrd asked. The being's expression didn't change, but the air around us seemed to grow colder. Your species is young, Admiral. You have not yet learned that there are consequences to actions, boundaries that must not be crossed. We have maintained this world's stability for far longer than your civilization has existed. We will continue to do so, with or without your cooperation. The communication ended abruptly. The being returned to its craft, the ramp dissolved back into the hull, and all 3 discs accelerated into the sky at speeds that defied physics. Byrd was quiet during the flight back to base. Only when we were alone in his quarters did he speak. Commander, I want you to promise me something. If anything happens to me, if I die under suspicious circumstances or disappear, I want you to make sure the truth survives somehow. Not the official truth, but what really happened here. Sir, what are you planning? I'm going to give them what they want. Complete evacuation, total secrecy, and an end to Antarctic operations. but I'm also going to make sure that someone, somewhere, knows what we encountered. Because this won't be the end of it, Commander, this is just the beginning. 3 days later, we left Antarctica. The official report stated that equipment failures and weather conditions had forced an early termination of the mission. Admiral Byrd gave a brief interview to Chilean press on our way home, where he made statements about enemies that could fly from pole to pole in minutes. Statements that were quickly dismissed as metaphorical references to future aviation technology. But I knew better. He was trying to warn the world in the only way he could about what was waiting beneath the ice. Final entry, Mason Hale, I'm dying. Cancer, doctors say, though I suspect it might be related to something I was exposed to during those weeks in Antarctica 47 years ago. I've carried this secret for nearly half a century, watching as the world moved closer to the precipice that entity warned us about. Admiral Byrd died in 1957, and with him went the last official connection to what we discovered. He never spoke publicly about the encounter, but he also never returned to Antarctica despite numerous opportunities. He knew, as I know, that some doors should remain closed. Over the years, I've watched for signs that they're still watching us. UFO sightings, unexplained aerial phenomena, technological advances that seem to leap beyond normal developmental curves. I believe they've been intervening subtly, perhaps preventing us from destroying ourselves before we develop the wisdom to handle our own power. But I also believe that patience is not infinite. Recent events suggest we're approaching another crossroads. The Cold War has ended, but new threats are emerging. Environmental destruction, nuclear proliferation, and a growing instability that suggests we haven't learned the lessons they hoped we would. I've hidden this journal for 47 years, waiting for the right time to reveal the truth. With my death approaching, I realise that time may never come. But perhaps, if this account survives, future generations will be better prepared for what's coming. Because they're still down there, watching, waiting. And the warning they gave Admiral Byrd still stands. There's something under the ice. Something that has been protecting this world far longer than we've existed on it. They gave us a chance to mature, to develop wisdom alongside our technology. Whether we've succeeded or failed remains to be seen. But next time, and there will be a next time, we may not leave. The journal of Lieutenant Commander Mason Hale was discovered in a safety deposit box in Phoenix, Arizona, in 1996, 3 years after his death from cancer. His nephew, David Hale, initially published excerpts online before the entire document mysteriously disappeared from all servers within 48 hours. David Hale himself died in a car accident 2 weeks later. This complete transcription was reconstructed from archived copies found on defunct servers and private hard drives. The authenticity has never been verified, and the US Navy maintains that Operation High Jump was a routine training and research mission that concluded successfully within normal parameters. Admiral Richard E. Byrd's post-expedition interview in Chile, where he spoke of enemies that could fly from pole to pole, remains a matter of public record. His subsequent removal from Antarctic operations and his reluctance to discuss the mission in detail has never been officially explained. Antarctica remains under international treaty, with military activities strictly prohibited. No nation has attempted another operation of high jump scale in the region where Lieutenant Commander Hale reported his encounters. The truth, as always, remains buried beneath the ice. Our story begins in the hush of classified hallways, where a program reminiscent of the real-life MK Ultra is in full clandestine swing. The term MK Ultra once dominated whispered conversations about CIA-led experiments in mind control during the 1950s through the 1970s. LSD, hypnosis, electroshock therapy. All these manipulations found their ominous place under the banner of national security. In that era, certain individuals were treated less like humans and more like lab specimens, subjected to psychological torment to test the boundaries of the human mind. In this retelling, you'll meet Dr. Elliot Voss, a brilliant neuroscientist initially enamoured with the idea of unlocking the brain's hidden capabilities. But once he steps into the labyrinthine research facility, known only as Project Echo, the illusions of noble science start to crumble. He sees sedation wards where detainees mumble to themselves, the aftermath of near-endless LSD runs, the blank stares of men and women forcibly parted from their own memories. Realising that the line between experiment and torture has been crossed, Voss chooses the perilous path of quiet rebellion. His antagonist, Agent Monroe Thatch, the stoic operative tasked with ensuring Project Echo remains undisturbed. Thatch views the program as a necessary evil in the arms race for psychological supremacy, and he's willing to bury any traitor who jeopardizes it. Meanwhile, among the catatonic subjects is Mara, once a sharp-witted journalist, now a disoriented test subject fighting to piece her identity back together. With Voss's help, she might just reclaim her mind and bring the truth to light. Across 5 parts, we'll trace how Voss moves from compliance to conscience, from naive fascination to outraged horror. We'll witness him sabotage experiments, forge documents, and orchestrate escapes. But each step he takes invites deeper suspicion from the Watchers, who guard Project Echo's secrets. At stake is not just his life, but the remnants of Mara's stolen memories and the fates of countless unnamed victims. Ultimately, Voss stands at the crossroads: vanish into the shadows forever, or blow the whistle on an atrocity that has no place in any civilization. Both choices carry lethal risks, so settle in with your blankets and your cautious curiosity. We're about to peel back the layers of a conspiracy that merges technology, psychology, and a ruthless government's quest for absolute control. May this story remind you that even in the darkest corners, a glimmer of empathy can ignite and transform. Grab a late-night snack or a soothing tea, and let's open the locked doors behind which Project Echo lurks. Dr. Elliot Voss first glimpsed the Project Echo compound on a drizzly autumn morning. He'd been flown in on a battered twin-prop plane, landing at a disused airstrip far from any major city. A black sedan awaited him, its driver silent as he whisked Voss down roads so winding that even the day's faint sunlight seemed lost. At last the car halted before a nondescript concrete building fenced by barbed wire, security cameras angled on every approach. A discreet sign read, Department of Psychological Research, Federal Program 17. But the rumour mill called it something else. A black site where boundaries of science and morality dissolved in the name of defence. Once inside, Voss was greeted by a perfunctory handshake from Agent Monroe Thatch, an older man with close-cropped grey hair and a near-permanent scowl. "Welcome to Echo," he said, voice devoid of warmth. "Your credentials speak volumes, Doctor. We trust you'll find your calling here." Voss forced a polite nod. Months earlier, he'd been approached by government contacts praising his neurology research, claiming they needed innovative strategies for advanced interrogation and memory therapy. Even then, he'd sensed the undercurrent of something sinister, yet his curiosity and a sense of patriotic duty had led him to accept. Perhaps too eagerly, he now thought. They stepped into an elevator that sank deep underground, well below the building's official levels. The corridor that welcomed them looked more hospital than dungeon. Sterilised floors, white walls, overhead fluorescents humming. But as they proceeded, Voss spotted armed guards at certain doorways, and the tension in the air was palpable. Thatch introduced him to a small cluster of lab-coated staff, who each nodded in clipped greetings. The orientation took the form of a restricted briefing. Project Echo was studying the interface between psychoactive substances and forced conditioning techniques. On the surface, they used the language of legitimate research, personality reformation, deep memory reprogramming. But as Voss scanned the faces of these staffers, he saw flickers of discomfort in some, while others seemed unnervingly at ease with such manipulations. Agents in suits hovered at the edges, ensuring no one forgot that everything was both top secret and mandatory. Before long, Thatch ushered Voss into a conference room. A dull projector displayed slides, images of men in straitjackets, eyes wide with confusion, graphs charting sedation levels for cooperative compliance. This was the first explicit hint that the subjects here were not volunteers. "We have various populations," Thatch said matter-of-factly. "Some from prisons, some who can't be officially recognised as detainees, subversives, potential traitors, or undesirables. We measure responses to LSD variants, isolation stints, hypnotic triggers." Each phrase rang alarm bells in Voss's conscience. Voss tried to keep his expression neutral. "And my role?" he asked. "How do I fit into the existing protocols?" Thatch tapped the slides. "We need your expertise to refine the memory disruption procedures. Our prior staff had trouble achieving stable amnesia in certain subjects. We want them to forget everything or reshape their personalities entirely. You are, from your academic work, well versed in neuroplasticity, yes?" Swallowing a surge of unease, Voss nodded. Indeed, he'd studied how neural pathways could be altered or overwritten, but never had he imagined applying this knowledge in forced experiments. He recalled the hopeful dream he once held, curing PTSD or reversing degenerative conditions. This was the polar opposite, weaponizing the brain's malleability. After the briefing, a short tour followed. Thatch escorted him through labyrinthine halls where observation windows peered into small windowless rooms. In one, a woman lay strapped to a table, an IV drip in her arm. "She's on the new LSD compound," a passing technician murmured. "Round-the-clock infusion for 3 days now. We're observing the break in her sense of time." Voss's stomach churned. The woman's vacant gaze signalled mental devastation. Indeed, her identity, her sense of reality, was being shredded systematically. They continued to a sealed chamber. Through the one-way glass, Voss saw a figure in a corner, rocking back and forth, muttering a phrase. A guard whispered that this man repeated the phrase, "I am safe, I am safe," for 72 hours under forced wakefulness. The staff measured at which point the mind caved. Voss felt his hand tremble on the doorknob. This was beyond any ethical boundary he knew. The final stop was a small lab assigned to Voss. Tidy. State-of-the-art machinery for EEG scans, chemical mixers and sedation equipment lined the counters. "Your workspace," Thatch said. "You'll liaise with lead researcher Dr. Klein on the next steps. Our aim, refine memory erasures so the subject retains basic function but loses prior allegiances. Field-operable assets, so to speak." He gave Voss a near smile, vile in its sincerity. After Thatch left, Voss sank into the lone office chair. He exhaled shakily. This was a realm of nightmares turned real, the hushed side of psyops he'd only read about in declassified rumours. Could he back out now? The door to the corridor was locked from the outside. Even if it wasn't, the entire facility was under watch. He was effectively a captive too, albeit a well-treated one. In that moment, part of Voss wanted to sabotage everything. Another part rationalised. If he left, they'd find a less scrupulous doctor. He might at least mitigate harm from within. Thus, he resolved to remain, observe carefully and decide how to protect these victims, if possible. He sensed that playing along for now was the only immediate recourse, but his heart hammered with the realisation that each day in Project Echo threatened to stain his conscience forever. Thus began his first evening. After an oppressive dinner in a staff cafeteria where conversation was stifled by suspicion, Voss retired to a Spartan dorm room. He stared at the overhead light, mind replaying the images of hollow-eyed subjects. He opened a small notebook, writing, "Day 1 at Echo. Real, or is it a waking nightmare?" He paused, pen trembling, then added, "I must help them. I can't be complicit in this horror." The vow took shape in those lines. A vow that would soon pit him against the entire apparatus and dangerously close to losing his own mind in the process. Over the ensuing weeks, Dr. Elliot Voss settled into a grim routine. By day, he wore a veneer of compliance. He joined team meetings, contributed to progress updates, and delivered mild improvements to the sedation protocols. By evening, he returned to his dorm, scrawling private notes in code about each subject he encountered. He'd never explicitly told himself he was building evidence for a leak, yet the thought loomed. If any chance arose to blow the whistle, these notes and data might be invaluable. One of the earliest glimpses of his moral rebellion emerged in the sedation labs. He discovered that a single LSD variant caused catastrophic neural collapse in half the test subjects. The lead researcher, Dr. Klein, considered that a necessary risk, but Voss quietly replaced that batch with a milder compound during an overnight supply swap. The next day's tests yielded lower compliance rates, incensing Klein, but no catastrophic breakdowns. The staff remained puzzled, blaming supply chain inconsistencies. Meanwhile, a cluster of subjects escaped the worst of LSD's ravaging effect. This small subversion boosted Voss's resolve. If he could keep individuals alive, or at least less harmed, he'd salvage a shred of decency. Soon, he seized further chances. In the psychological reprogramming ward, the official logs demanded daily electroshock of certain subjects to keep them pliant. Voss tampered with the voltage calibrations in the machines. The staff, trusting the readouts, believed they were delivering the full jolt, but in reality the shock was far lower, enough for the outward show but sparing vital neural tissue. Some subjects began to regain flickers of their personalities, though the guards or lesser staff seldom noticed these subtle awakenings. Yet each small act risked detection. Agent Monroe Thatch remained vigilant. He frequently examined lab results, noticing anomalies. Hard-coded instructions from the top required consistent escalation of dose, yet Voss's logs sometimes reported plateau or slight reduction. Thatch confronted him once, an intense stare across Voss's desk. "Why are your sedation numbers not matching the forecast curves?" Voss feigned confusion. "The subjects show sensitivity. Pushing them further could cause organ failure. We need them stable, not comatose, for accurate data." Thatcher's eyes narrowed. "Proceed carefully, Doctor. We can't have emotional squeamishness hamper results. The program demands unwavering commitment." At night, Voss's nightmares grew. He saw faces of the men and women trapped in the wards, calling out for help in twisted illusions. The next day he would pass them in hallways, or watch from the observation deck while they were forced through group suggestion experiments. Some faintly recognised him as a kinder presence, though fear kept them from speaking. In that swirl of oppression, one subject emerged who stirred Voss's determination to new heights. Subject number 23, Mara. She'd been a journalist, rumoured to have pried too deeply into rumoured CIA black sites. Kidnapped from her apartment, she ended up in Echo. Initially sedated to the brink of catatonia, she now hovered in a half-lucid state, memories fraying at the edges. The logs indicated repeated LSD trials, amnestic injections, and forced re-education sessions. One afternoon, while scanning her EEG patterns, Voss recognised signs of partial memory recall. He discreetly adjusted her medication, lowering the sedation so she might piece together her identity. Over the next few days, Mara began to speak in hushed fragments. "They took me. I was investigating. Hush, hush." She'd blink, tears sliding down her cheeks. Voss murmured calm reassurances, feigning routine checks whenever staff were near. But in whispered intervals he told her, "You're not crazy. You were a journalist. They want you silent." She stared wide-eyed, a glimmer of trust in him forming. Around that time, Voss orchestrated his first genuine escape for a group of 3. They were lesser-known detainees, men rumoured to be either drifters or misidentified suspects. Official logs had them listed as unresponsive, terminated. In reality, Voss manipulated the monthly disposal protocol used for expired subjects. He bribed a facility ambulance driver, forging documents that indicated the men's bodies needed to be incinerated off-site. The driver, half sympathetic, half eager for the hush money, smuggled them out alive, releasing them near a safe contact in a neighbouring state. The official story read, 3 deceased, remains destroyed. None in the facility questioned it, as the programme's culture was that death often came with high-intensity testing. Days later, Voss glimpsed a brief mention in an underground newsletter about 2 men claiming to have escaped a mind-controlled black site. The reference was oblique, overshadowed by bigger news, but it confirmed the men had survived. The satisfaction balanced the daily dread. He was making a difference. Inevitably, suspicious details mounted. Thatch compiled a list of oddities, sedation logs not aligning with standard progression, and apparent sabotage of LSD supplies, puzzling anomalies in electroshock calibrations. He confronted Dr. Klein, who shrugged and pinned blame on incompetent lab techs. Thatch, unconvinced, began monitoring the labs more closely. Surveillance cameras were installed in corridors where previously only guards roamed. The staff's tension soared. People whispered about a traitor in the ranks. Mara's partial awakening threatened to accelerate that tension. She recalled scattered details. I wrote about covert experiments. I found leads. Then they came. She became convinced she had evidence locked away in some safe deposit box. If only she could get out, contact her old editor. Voss realised that if they freed Mara and she reconnected with her network, the entire Echo operation could be exposed. He urged caution, but the time might come for a major leak. He began compiling more thorough evidence, tapes of sessions, chemical batch numbers, statements from staff. This was no longer small sabotage. It was heading for an all-out revelation, if they pulled it off. But the noose tightened. One evening, a junior staffer who'd glimpsed Voss's tampered logs confronted him quietly. "Doctor, I know you're altering the dosage records. If they discover it, we're done. I can't lose my job." Fear emanated from the staffer's eyes. Voss tried to reassure him, claiming it was only calibrations to ensure stable data. The staffer seemed partly convinced, yet the whisper that a traitor existed was out. Faced with the inevitability that Thatch would soon piece it all together, Voss concluded they had to act soon. He told Mara, "When I trigger your final sedation test tomorrow, it'll be a ruse. We'll fake your body as deceased. If all goes well, I'll place you on the same disposal run that I used before. You must get out, find a journalist or safe contact, and blow the lid off Project Echo. That's the only way to stop them from hunting me or recapturing you." Mara, trembling, agreed. Her memories, though incomplete, burned with enough clarity to know that once outside she could expose everything, including the role of powerful officials. Thus the quiet revolt escalated into a plan for a full-blown leak. Voss spent a sleepless night forging documents, labelling Mara's condition as terminal adverse LSD reaction. A single slip, a single suspicious guard, and it would fail. He prayed that luck or justice would be on their side. The next day, under the fluorescent hum of the sedation ward, he prepared the final dose for Mara. If all went to plan, it would appear lethal to those who glanced at the monitors. If not, they'd both pay with their lives. The morning air in the sedation ward felt stale, as if all the walls exhaled dread. Dr. Elliot Voss had planned Mara's final sedation meticulously. He'd prepared a specialised injection that would mimic the vital signs of death for about an hour, just enough time for her to pass official checks. He also had the help of a sympathetic nurse, quietly convinced these subjects were being tortured rather than treated. The nurse would sign the forged death certificate, then assist in transferring Mara to the disposal route. Agent Monroe Thatch, always on the prowl, decided to personally oversee the sedation ward's operations that day. Perhaps the intensifying rumours spurred him to watch for sabotage. At 8 a.m. he strode in, nodding curtly at staff. Voss's pulse pounded. If Thatch insisted on verifying each injection or examining the body, the entire plan might collapse. In a stroke of fortune, a separate incident across the facility demanded Thatcher's immediate attention. A subject in the LSD reconditioning chamber had violently lashed out, injuring a technician. Alarms blared. Thatch barked an apology to Voss. "Carry on without me," then rushed off. Voss allowed himself a momentary breath of relief. With the path cleared, Voss proceeded. He found Mara lying on a gurney in a semi-daze, the sedation regimen intentionally minimal these past few days. She locked eyes with him, and in that silent exchange he sensed her fear and determination. "This is it," he whispered. "Once the injection takes hold, you'll appear in a comatose or near-death state. The nurse will record your final breath." Mara nodded, voice shaky. "What if I don't wake up? Or if they discover the ruse?" Voss swallowed. "We have no alternative. Trust me." He administered the injection, then monitored her vitals. Within minutes, Mara's heartbeat slowed to an almost imperceptible rate, her respiration dropping to faint levels. She looked disturbingly lifeless, though a doctor examining closely might sense the subtle difference. The nurse hovered by Voss's side, forging the official time of death. "Deceased, subject number 23, LSD-induced catatonia and systemic shock," the chart read. Mara was wheeled to the body disposal unit, a euphemism for the corridor leading to the incinerator. There, a gurney waited to be rolled inside. The staff who typically oversaw this station were accustomed to treating each body as just another casualty in the programme's pursuit of progress. Voss told them, "She's gone. The logs are signed." They glanced at the form, nodded. No further questions. It stung him that human life had become so trivial here. But in their numb acceptance lay an advantage. None suspected deception. A short while later, a security alarm beeped at the disposal gate. An ambulance was inbound to handle off-site incineration for multiple bodies that had piled up. One of them was Mara. This was the route Voss had used before to free detainees. He parted from the nurse with a subtle nod, hoping to see Mara again, but uncertain. The plan demanded that once out, she find the safe contact, blow the whistle, and vanish. Voss felt both terror and hope swirling in his chest as the ambulance rolled out of the facility gates. But fate had a twist. Within an hour, Agent Thatch returned to Voss's lab. The earlier incident was resolved, yet Thatch's mood bristled with suspicion. He asked, "So, Doctor?" "Voss, I see you had a death this morning. Another LSD complication?" Voss feigned sorrow. "Yes, subject number 23. She'd been on advanced trials." The data spiked unpredictably. She passed quickly. Thatcher's gaze drilled into him. "I find it odd. 23 was stable just days ago with talk of new protocols. What changed so drastically?" A wave of anxiety threatened Voss's composure. The final LSD variant proved lethal in her case. "I regret we couldn't intervene." She collapsed swiftly. He managed to keep his voice steady, though Thatcher's posture indicated mistrust. "Show me the logs. All details," Thatch demanded. Together they pored over the sedation records, ECG readouts, all forged or manipulated by Voss.